I think driving a car is better than using public transport because it gives you freedom and flexibility. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want, without worrying about bus or train schedules.
While it's true that a car can feel more flexible, public transport is often more affordable and eco-friendly. You don't have to worry about parking or traffic fines, and you're helping reduce pollution.
Imagine you need to run errands, grocery shopping, picking up a friend, maybe hitting a store outside the city. A car lets you combine all these tasks in one trip. You don't have to walk long distances from the station or wait for connections.
But public transport can be incredibly convenient too. Many cities have buses and trains running every 10 to 15 minutes during peak hours. You can use your phone to check schedules in real time. Plus, you avoid the stress of looking for parking or dealing with traffic jams.
That's if your city has reliable service. In smaller towns or rural areas, buses might run only once an hour or not at all on weekends. With a car, you're never stuck waiting for the next bus.
True, rural areas can be tricky, but in cities, public transport networks are usually extensive. And when services run late, ride-sharing apps can fill in the gaps at a lower cost than driving your own car for the same trip.
Owning a car has costs: fuel, insurance, maintenance, but if you drive every day, those costs can become worth it for the convenience. Also, if you share a car with family or friends, the per-person cost decreases.
Let's compare actual U.S. numbers. According to AAA's 2024 study, the average annual cost to own and operate a car here is about $12,300 per year, around $1,025 per month, factoring in fuel, insurance, maintenance, registration, and depreciation. By contrast, a typical monthly public transit pass in many U.S. cities is about $70, which adds up to $840 per year. Even if you need occasional rideshare or taxi rides for late-night trips, you still end up saving thousands compared to car ownership.
But public transport costs can add up if you travel outside normal zones or during peak hours. And if you need to commute long distances, multiple transfers can mean buying several tickets a day.
Many systems offer regional or unlimited ride passes. For example, in Los Angeles, a TAPI card can cover buses and trains across multiple zones for around $100 per month, still under $1,200 per year. Meanwhile, parking fees downtown can easily run $2 to $5 per hour. That's $200 to $500 a month if you park daily. Even with a carpool or cheaper parking, these additional costs make public transit comparatively cheaper.
There's also the resale value of your car. With proper maintenance, you can sell it later and recoup some of your investment. Public transport doesn't give you any resale value. Once you spend on tickets, it's gone.
That's true, but depreciation in the U.S. is steep. A new car can lose 40 to 50% of its value in the first 3 years. On the other hand, a lifelong transit pass is still gone, so you don't get anything back, but your overall yearly outlay is much lower. And many employers offer commuter benefits that cover up to $300 in monthly transit costs, pre-tax, further reducing your effective expense.
Cars certainly emit more CO2 per passenger kilometer compared to buses or trains, but modern cars are getting cleaner. Hybrid and electric vehicles reduce emissions drastically. If you switch to an electric car and charge with renewable energy, your carbon footprint can be very low.
That's a valid point for EVs, but electric cars are still expensive up front in the U.S., even after federal tax credits. Meanwhile, many city buses and commuter trains run on electricity or renewable natural gas. For instance, New York's MTA fleet is moving towards zero-emission buses. When you divide the total emissions by the number of passengers, mass transit often has just a few grams of CO2 per passenger mile, versus an EV's life cycle emissions from manufacturing and battery production.
What about the battery production impact? Manufacturing EV batteries involves mining rare minerals like lithium and cobalt, which can cause environmental damage and often involve unethical labor practices.
Exactly. Public transit avoids many of those mining and manufacturing issues per person. Plus, if more people took transit, cities could reduce traffic congestion, cutting down on idling cars that pollute far more per mile than even older gas vehicles.
On the other hand, driving can be good for your mental health. You have your own private space, control over music, temperature, and you can avoid crowded buses or trains. Public transport can be stressful during rush hours, with pushing and shoving.
But walking to and from bus or train stations adds physical activity to your day, which is great for health, especially given the sedentary lifestyle common in the U.S. And during the transit time, you can read, study, or even relax rather than focusing on driving. You arrive less tired because you're not constantly scanning GPS, changing lanes, and minding traffic.
Driving a car can actually be safer these days than public transport. Cars have advanced safety features, airbags, collision avoidance systems, lane departure warnings. Plus, you know who's driving the car. You. On buses or trains, you can't always guarantee the driver's skill or the behavior of other passengers.
Statistics from the National Transit Database show that public transit has a lower accident rate per passenger mile than cars. In the U.S., motor vehicle crashes remain a leading cause of injury and death, especially for younger adults. Bus drivers undergo professional training and follow strict safety protocols. Trains run on dedicated tracks, reducing the chance of collisions.
But what about late-night travel? If you're coming home past midnight, some public transit routes don't run or they stop early. With a car, you're not dependent on a timetable.
True, late-night routes can be limited. However, major metro areas like New York, Boston, and Chicago offer 24-hour services on key lines. Even if frequency drops, you can still get home cheaply and safely. Otherwise, a short rideshare at 2 a.m. costs maybe $15 to $25, far cheaper than the $50 to $100 you might spend on parking and extra driving time if you own a car.
Long-term, using a car can mean you need to be more self-reliant. You learn to maintain and fix things. You also develop a sense of responsibility, making sure your car is insured, serviced, and safe.
That independence is great, but public transport teaches you patience and respect for community resources. You learn to share space with others, be mindful of seats, and think about where you stand in line. It fosters a sense of community, something Americans often miss when everyone drives alone.
However, many public transport systems get overcrowded. Sometimes you can't get a seat or you're standing in a cramped space, which can be uncomfortable, especially during long trips.
Overcrowding is a challenge, but many cities are investing in bigger train cars, double-decker buses, and more frequent service. And consider this: if everyone drove instead of taking public transport, roads in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or Houston would be gridlocked. You'd spend hours stuck, making even a short drive take far longer than a packed train.
Ultimately, the choice depends on individual priorities. If you value personal space, spontaneous trips, and don't mind paying extra, a car might be better. You can tailor it to your lifestyle, road trips, late-night drives, or weekend getaways without worrying about catching the last train.
Public transport is usually the better option if you want to save money, help the environment, and reduce stress around parking and traffic. In the U.S., owning a car costs over $12,000 a year on average, compared to under $1,000 a year for a transit pass. It encourages healthier lifestyles through walking and can be more reliable during rush hours when traffic is bad. Plus, it's a social space where you meet different people every day.